All right, guys, good morning. My name is Aaron Zelenskis. I am the owner and founder of Ultraliminal Consulting. Thank you for taking some time today to join my leadership development masterclass. I appreciate it. I know you guys are busy. You're working professionals and you guys have work to do, and time costs money. So I really appreciate that. A little bit about me, my background. I've spent 20 years in operations and leadership. I started back in the Air Force back in the early 2000s. I worked I was in a career field called Tactical Air Control Party, which basically were forward air controllers. So you work with Army and Marine Corps ground combat units, and you coordinate and conduct their close air support operations. And so in doing that, I learned a lot about coordination, deconfliction, and then learning how to work with people at the lowest levels to the highest levels on trying to integrate fires and integrate space, integrate battle space to be effective. In doing that, I completed my service in 2006 and then got out and went to school. So I did my undergrad in physics and I did a master's in business. And then from there, I worked in manufacturing, I worked in high-speed bottling, and then I worked at a dry dock and a fish production plant or a fish packaging plant, and then spent 9 years in distressed asset real estate. And in that, I've worked with teams ranging between 2 and 90, non-union, locals and foreign nationals, all that kind of stuff. So there's not a lot that I haven't seen in my career or worked with. And so that's a little bit about me. There we go. So this is a quick overview what we're going to go over today. Nothing too crazy. Really what we're looking at doing here with this masterclass, guys, is we're looking at really solidifying basically the rudimentary fundamental pieces of what it is for leadership development. You can't start developing leaders or even put in a leadership development program if you don't have the basic courses and alignments in place. So this is really the kind of those things.
Sorry now. Sorry now.
Can somebody mute their screaming?
There we go. I'm going to apologize for that. I muted everybody. So apologize, my skill set on Zoom isn't the best sometimes. If you have a question as we're going through, go ahead and unmute yourself and just ask. It's not a problem. So yeah, so going through really quick on this overview, basically we're just looking at setting foundational frameworks and bases for being able to build off of. You can't set up a program, you can't lead or develop people if you don't have a framework to work from. And this kind of keeps things aligned and gets the basics taken care of. So that way, as you start going through the development program, people have something to work off of and they can always revert back to the basics if they get lost or have questions. So our big thing with today is we're trying to get our goals today we want to eliminate your chaos, we want to increase your profits, we want you to enjoy your life, right? And so we eliminate chaos by prioritizing and executing. So basically effectively placing things and efforts where they're supposed to be going. And by effectively placing our efforts, we increase our profits because we're not wasting our time. Whether it be your time or your staff's time, we want to decrease that waste to increase your time spent on productivity, and therefore you can make more, which therefore you start enjoying your life, because if we take the haste out of your life and you're not running around like a crazy person, you now have time to enjoy things. You can handle things as they come up, as opposed to being reactive. You can be proactive. That just makes your life better. And before we kind of go to the next slide, I want you to think about the eliminate daily chaos piece. And I want you, if you have a moment to write something down, just make a brief note of, what is there in your day, whether it be part of your work day, part of your personal day, or a work process that you're a part of that has some chaos that needs to be, dealt with or looked at. And then that way, you can start thinking of those things as we go through this. So you can start thinking of how these tools we're going to start talking about apply to your day, to your work, to your life. And we can start talking about how to start integrating those pieces to start buying you some time back and get your life back.
Okay. All right. Awesome. Okay, no problem. Thank you. Okay. You too. Bye-bye.
Just for everybody who's on the call, if you could please put yourself on, there you go. Thank you. If you join in, please put yourself on mute. And if you want to ask a question or make a comment, you can go ahead and unmute yourself and then just introduce yourself and go ahead and speak. That's fine. All right. So tools. These are the basic tools you and your people should be using every day. They're very straightforward. They're not complex, but it really sets the stage for being able to develop your leadership, especially with your staff and working with them, because you got to remember, like, if the person they look to every day is you, like, you're the leader, you're the boss theoretically, or you're the entrepreneur who's building that team from the ground up, and everything's contagious, everything's looked at meticulously. So the way you dress, your hair, how you carry yourself when things are good or bad, and the tone of your voice. So our biggest challenge, obviously, or the biggest thing that we need to do is have a good attitude. Attitude's everything. And that really sets the groundwork, because people are going to see how you take poor information, how you take good information, and then what you do with that. Do you clench your jaw? Does your face look funny? Do you have some odd mannerisms? You want to clean those things up. You want people to think cool, calm, confident. And it's not that you're trying to be fake, but there's a presence you need to have, in your structure. So it's called a command presence. You want to be able to carry yourself in such a fashion that, one, inspires them to want to do better, but then also, two, keeps things on an even keel. There's no need to get things to have things escalate because you can't control your own mannerisms or your own behavior. So you really need to think about that. And you set the standard for what's acceptable. If you're impatient with people because they're asking multiple questions, then they're going to be impatient with their people who are asking multiple questions. So it's kind of setting that benchmark. Number two, notebook and pen. Everybody has, obviously, smartphones, or they have smartwatches nowadays too. And so taking digital notes works fairly well. However, you do have to turn it on. It does have to be charged. So a notebook and pen always works really well, especially for junior staff. So that way they can always have it on them, and it gives them something to be responsible for. Because we know junior staff, they have broken phones, they have broken watches, they forget them, or they let them die. So they have to keep a notebook and a pen on them. That's half the battle. And it's important. And this way, when you have a conversation with somebody, they can take some brief notes, they can read those notes back to you, and you can clarify anything that they're missing. They don't have to come back to you 3 times to get clarifying information or further on information. So really what you're trying to do is you're trying to optimize their time, optimize yours, and you're trying to teach them good habits. And you do the same by, when you speak with them or they bring you a problem, you're taking notes to ask them feedback on, did you take something down correctly? So that way you can address what they're asking specifically and efficiently. Email, you need to have, obviously you guys are all business professionals, so you have a professional email, but it mostly is more towards staff. Professional email is important. Obviously, everybody knows that the basics of what is supposed to be in that email body, or in the email, signature line, we'll call it. But this is more about just having people understand that if you have something of a conversation or a phone call or a text or anything on social media that's kind of going back and forth as one of your, or a Slack channel, anything like that, that when information goes back out, it needs to go back out to the group in an email as a summary with everybody tied in. And it's doing basic communication to keep everybody tied into the same spot, so everybody's aware and knows what's going on. And then that way, everybody has one place to reference. They can search their email. It's pretty straightforward. Now, obviously, we go from good attitude, notebook, to email, to a task list. The reason preferably digital and online is you can make this obviously just your own task list, but you can also do this with your staff and with your teams. It gives people one place to look for information, one place to update information. And so people can take stuff from their notebook, their email, put it in the task list, or you can do that. And then people don't have to remember, you don't have to remember. And so it starts narrowing out the gaps where things can fall through the holes. And so a task list is important. And then last but not least, obviously your calendar. We all use digital calendars at this point, but preferably digital if you don't, because you can integrate your email, your task list, and your calendar. The idea here being that if we integrate these pieces and you teach your staff to integrate these pieces, all of a sudden the ability for things to fall through the cracks, get lost, get misplaced, get forgotten, rapidly diminishes, which means you're not wasting time and effort trying to find information or put out fires that were unintentional. Next, we're just going to talk some very basic communication stuff. We hit on some of this on our last slide with tools. But one of the biggest thing with communications, obviously, is clarification. It's making sure everybody's on the same page. And that's not just for them telling you back what you heard or what they heard from you, but you also saying from them what they've said if they're bringing you challenges that they have. We all know, we've all seen it. We've done it before when we were younger in our careers where, you know, you're excited that somebody saw interest in you. They gave you a task. You're like, Roger, you took off like a missile to go get it accomplished. And then all of a sudden you found out you got to where you're going and you were missing, you know, a couple of items of information that you probably needed to ask about. And so this allows you just to, hey, put a brief pause there. Do you understand what I'm saying? Yes, no. What are you doing? Okay, good. Or if they're asking you questions, so I'm hearing you correctly, you're saying you're missing XYZ resource. And that kind of goes from there. As we discussed about the emails are a must, not a maybe. Part of this with communication basics, reason I brought emails back up is more of talking about how teaching junior staff members, and even for yourself, different vendors or different people might communicate more efficiently with using different modalities. So you might have somebody who does better on phone calls, better on an email, better on a text, better on a Slack channel, 50 different things. At the end of the day, though, there needs to be a summary email sent out that goes back through, has everybody copied who needs to be copied on that information if it's important and relevant to them. And then that way, everybody gets the information. And then two, for that person you had the phone call with or we're on a text thread with, it gives them a searchable feature also that's easy to reference and follow. And then if they have a problem because they don't think of it, they didn't clarify, they can come back then and ask based off that email with follow-up, and everybody gets that. So it's just a reference for that, guys. And last but not least, challenges and problems. The biggest thing you can do for your staff and for anybody really is to work with them on a framework for how to present challenges and problems. Because ideally, if you're building and generating a staff that's can shoot, move, and communicate, or is capable and competent and can persistently execute, is you want them to run the ball as far as they can with the resources they have available without interference. And so when they do bring you a problem, to make it efficient, they need to be able to define that problem, give a potential solution, and then tell you what they think the perceived outcome is going to be. And what this allows you to do is see if they've, one, gone through all the resources they have, if they've thought through their actual solution, like what that looks like, and then three, do they know the tertiary effects? Like, it doesn't do any good if you have a problem, build a solution, execute it, and it causes 6 more problems down the line. Now, sometimes there is a case where it's just like, hey, we got to deal with one issue as it comes up. But you want to see that they're doing more than just stomping out fires. You want to see that there's some complex problem solving going on, and they're not inventing more challenges further down the road because they made a poor decision that was easy early on. So we're going to talk about our #1 resource, which everybody says they understand it, but most people don't actually follow that. And we're going to kind of get into some of that here in a little bit. Basically, your #1 job in leadership is managing resources and specifically developing your people. And the resource you're teaching people to develop and the resource you're managing is basically time. Time's your big resource. It doesn't come back. We all only get 24 hours in a day. When it's gone, it's gone. That's it. So your job as a leader is to learn how to maximize that return on investment for the time that you're spending. And you do that by teaching your staff through leadership development how to specifically sit down and utilize their resources effectively, specifically time, by developing their mindset and their tools that they have available to them on how they actually process through work and how they function and structure. And where that really starts at is with you as the leader. Because you have to have a framework that goes with how do you actually look at time, how do you break that through your day. And so that starts with prioritization. And prioritization, I didn't put it up here because it's a little bit lengthy, but it's, you guys can read those things, but the definition I have for it is a task filtering process against the company mission that allows for the effective and efficient processing of multiple competing resource commitments. And the reason I wrote that out is because, as you guys know from your work and through what you do in your days, there's a lot of times where you do have a lot of challenges. There's a lot of conflicting things going on in, say, your daily operations or inside the priorities that get sent out to staff. And so one of the easiest things you can do is always look at your prioritization and go, okay, well, am I setting proper guidance? Is my guidance going for the company mission? Yes, no, it's binary. And not in a little way, like there's ways to play that, and everybody knows that. But it's really looking at like, what's the real company mission here? What's our real goal? What are we really trying to accomplish? Does it meet that guideline? Okay, if it's yes, then you need to give a priority to staff saying, okay, well, here's your 1 through 5, and literally label them out 1 through 5. And it's making sure those 1 through 5 are then properly resourced. Because why? You don't want people wasting time chasing down resources. They need to have what they need to have so they can get it accomplished in an efficient manner. There's no way to lose buy-in faster on a project than to be like, hey guys, here's our priority, off you go, and they show up and half the stuff's not there. Like that's a no-go, it's a non-starter. And so when you set the priority by providing guidance and clarity on what you want accomplished, you ensure it's resourced properly, and you have those two things aligned, all of a sudden, you start seeing your throughput go through the roof, because why? Operations flow smoothly. There's no hiccups, there's no backups, there's nothing missing. It just operates how it should operate because the things that are supposed to be there are there, and it just moves on its own. So for prioritization, we have I like to use 2 different filters, or my 2 main filters to start. And this is how you really kind of start teaching the time management piece to juniors, and how you can teach your staff. Everybody, this works for any task, but the time filter here, the example I have is email. And email is because everybody always has the email monster, and it's always, I have 300 plus emails and I can't get to it, or it's lost, and XYZ. I utilize this method to process about 400 emails a day for 10 years. And I had 0 unread emails every single day. So it works, and it works well. This obviously can apply to any set of tasks that take time, and we'll get into some other pieces here in a minute. But basically what the goal of this is, it's pretty straightforward. You guys can read basically as an email, anything that's less than a minute, you do that first, then 2 to 5, 6 to 10, 11 to 30. And you can crank through several hundred emails a day, a couple hundred emails in an hour by utilizing this process, which means that your things for facilitation, which is our next filter, it's your priority of work. Well, you have emergencies, you have urgents, you have immediates, you have end of day, 2 days out, inside the week, more than a week out. Well, you have information trapped in email that's sitting there that pushes each one of those pieces forward. And so by simply having a time filter on work, where it's teaching people how to go through their work and be efficient with it, and then understanding like how they facilitate operations in a day-to-day, all of a sudden you start moving information across the line that used to take 2 days, a week. Now it simply takes an hour, because people who used to have that 1-minute piece of information that was pushing that 2-day project that turned into an emergency because it sat in their email for 3 days doesn't exist anymore. Because every morning they come in and they bang through their emails, everything's set up, everything gets onto the task list, they're checking their task list and doing their follow-ups, and all of a sudden information moves from the inbox through facilitation into the task list, the things being completed. And so this is the easiest way to really start getting people to buy in and understand where their time has value and where your time has value too. Because I'm sure for you guys, you've got instances and situations where it's like, hey, I continually feel like I'm stomping out fires all day long. Okay, well, why? Well, I didn't find out to the last minute. Well, why didn't you find out to the last minute? Okay, well, somebody had that information in their inbox, or it was in my inbox, it was at the bottom because I didn't see it. Okay, well, how often are you going through your emails? How quickly do you go through them? How do you process them? Oh, I went from the top down. Okay, well, is that really the best way to go about doing that? And so it's really taking, the basics and just saying, okay, like, well, how do I really make this to where I'm really, getting the biggest bang for my buck? Because that's what you're really looking for. You're looking to make sure you're getting critical information out, to facilitate your operations, to keep things moving. Because that's what we're looking for. We're looking for completions. Looking to close sales, get product out the door, satisfy customers. And so, is a customer going to be happier with a late email saying, I'm sorry for the 3rd time, or are they just be happy if something came to them early, whether it be a good response or a bad response? So our next filter that we use is the delegation filter. And so since we went through time, on facilitation, our next portion ends up becoming delegation. And this is where our leadership development really starts with staff, because this is where it should be seating in your mind that not only do I need to be delegating, but like I can use delegation as my tool for leadership development with my staff. You don't have to have a fancy getaway. You don't have to have some crazy person come in and jump on tables and sell you something. You can use your day-to-day taskings to do leadership development with your staff to grow their capabilities and their capacities to get your organization to the next level and to get you back the time that you need, mostly for you, which should be, more profits or more profitable opportunities. So looking at strategic growth or getting into different markets or those kind of things. So the goal here is to really get you to spend your time on strategic level things as opposed to tactical level things, just like the day-to-day operations, get you out of firefighting and get you into running and managing your business. And so you can look here and see we have the time filter, we have the facilitation folder and I kept these up for two reasons. And it's because you can look in here and you can say, okay, well, leadership development opportunities for staff. Okay, well, do you have an assistant? Well, yes, I do. How much do they actually assist you with? What tasks can they do? That's a pretty simple one. You can go through and find things that are 1, 2 to 5 minutes, 6 to 10 minutes that you can probably pass off to them, and they can learn a format for that. And they can start moving those processes through, which takes that off your desk. And you can start losing some of these other pieces that, the goal for you is to go from emergency running to, over a week out, be theoretically what you need, unless there's something where you do need to step in once in a while, but that's okay. But really what you're looking to do here is look in this space to find scenarios and time to start finding out who you can pass those things off to and how do you build into that week out, a week plus, 2 days, where you can start putting people into places and letting them start to grow and letting them start to learn because you've built in that space to allow them to do that. And that then allows you to have better opportunities for yourself as the business owner. So for delegation, what we're looking at is a basic delegation framework. It's not really crazy. It's really straightforward. So you're going to prepare your task, you're going to do the task, and then you're going to do a post-task debrief. And so in preparing the task, you want to pull whoever that person is aside, and you're going to go through them from A to Z, what that task is. All the parts, all the pieces, all the resources. Think of it as like going from, they know absolutely nothing all the way through to they need to know everything. And obviously, depending on the size of the task that it is, this might get broken down into different parts. Basically, you're preparing a task with them, which you might actually do with them, but you might not. And really what you're trying to make sure is that they understand the task, that they understand the resources they have, and that they have the resources they're supposed to have. And then you're clearly setting expectations and then boundaries. And the expectations are, if it's their first time doing it, it's not going to be perfect. So you have to remove that from your thought process of what needs to happen. There is no perfect. It's just going to be, they're going to do the best they can. And then the boundaries are, you're going to check in with them. Like if you say, hey, this should take if you know it should take an hour and they're at an hour 10, you need to be going out to go check on them. You need to set that up in your schedule and your calendar to make sure you're following up on that. You need to pre-brief that. And also anything that's a safety stop or a quality check stop, all those things are the boundaries that kind of keep them in lane. And if they have decision points that you want them to ask about, those kind of things, those are all your boundaries. And then your expectation is just what kind of quality are you hoping to get out of them? From there, we move on to the task. And in this case, we're not looking for perfection. We're looking for that they're doing like between a 75 and 80% solution. You're really looking just to make sure that they're following procedure, they're getting it accomplished, and it's meeting the standard that you've set. And if it isn't, then that's where you need to step in and say, hey, at the boundary checks, hey, this isn't meeting standard. Let me show you how to make it meet standard, and then move from there. But really, you're not looking there to go, well, hey, like you didn't hit 100%, you're wrong. It's more of like, did you hit 80%? Is that okay? Yes. Off they go to the next thing. And really what you're trying to do is you're trying to give them the freedom to work, to develop problem-solving skills, and to build confidence. Because that's what it's about. Because at the end of the day, the whole goal of leadership development is to build a staff that's capable, competent, and can persistently execute, which means that they're running the day-to-day while you're trying to run strategic level, higher level value things. Because if you're with a business owner and your time, say, worth $500 to $1,000 an hour, there's no reason you should be doing having a basic phone call with a supplier about something being wrong, or following up with some customer who's upset. Really, it should be somebody on the staff who's well acquainted with what's going on. That's their strong suit. And yet they've been instructed on it, and they've got enough leeway and boundary to maneuver and do what happens, unless it's going to get something like, they've threatened a lawsuit and then they'd come get you because obviously it's legal. But like short of that, they should be able to run that. That's the whole goal, is just trying to build yourself that space. And you can't do that if you don't let people build confidence and they don't get to build capacity. And then from there, once the task is done and they've completed it, it's a good deliverable and you're happy with the quality product, you have your post-task debrief. And really what you're doing there is you're having them walk you through what they did for the task. So what things they were strong on, what things they had challenges with, what things they liked and didn't like about the task, which sounds kind of silly, but it's important to understand like what your people like and don't like. And it's not that you're going to like not have them do things they don't like, because clearly they work for you. So they're going to do things they don't like, but there might be a way to help them understand better what it is that's being accomplished by them doing that task they don't appreciate. And that can kind of help, say, help medicine go down, so to speak, in certain regards as they're growing professionally and they're learning. Because there's a lot of things we don't like, but then it's really teaching like, hey, even on the things you don't like, you do it right the first time, because you do it right the first time. That's the fastest way it gets done. And then we're out of the suck much more quickly than having to redo this for the third time because people just aren't paying attention because they don't like it. So just something to keep in mind. So basically, you're gonna have the staff review the task, and then you're gonna also where they felt strong, where they felt weak, and then you're gonna cover any of your shortcomings in the task, because maybe you didn't brief it properly, you didn't resource it properly, or you didn't give good boundaries or expectations. You're a human being, you're fallible. So if you had any problems in there where you had challenges that you didn't adequately meet for their needs, then you need to voice that during that post-task debrief to be like, hey, yep, I see here, I dropped the ball on that. That was me, my bad. And here's how I'm going to remedy that for next time, and make that note for yourself. Because the big thing you're trying to show to people is like, it doesn't do any good to be like, well, hey, I'm the boss, I'm the leader, I'm developing you. Here's where you failed, need to get better. Where like, if you have shortcomings, you're not willing to say, well, hey, yep, I screwed up here, I need to make a change. You want to show that there's accountability across the board, from, call the board of directors down to the chief of the floor sweeps. Everybody's held to the same standard. There's one standard. And if you make a mistake, raise your hand, fix it. And you go from there. And that's how you get a lot of buy-in with people, because people don't, nobody wants to get stomped on, in their day, and then see other people make mistakes and they don't get talked to about it. So it's just easy to make sure, hey, if there's a mistake, air it, get it corrected, move forward. There's one standard for them and for you. Everybody's on the same one. And so this would be like the 1 minute leadership development spiel that you would give them at the end of that whole task debrief. And so you're going to do a stop doing, a start doing, a continue doing, and a future expectations on the same or similar tasks. And the reason you do this is because it's short, it's sweet. They're probably going to forget half the things you talked about in that debrief piece, but most people can remember stop, start, continue. And then because they have their notebook on them, they can write that down. And when they write that down, they can put it in their pocket. And the next time you have them out, wherever it might be, doing some work, and they're going to come to you and you're like, hey, got something for you. Write this down. They're going to write down that task you're going to give them, theoretically, or email, however it works. And you can say, hey, go back to your notes on this date. Remember what we talked about. Stop, start, continue. This is what I expect from you. Go and be awesome. Off you go. And theoretically, they're going to go and do that next task, hopefully a little bit better, a little bit more shinier, a little bit more efficiently. You do that enough times, and you start having somebody who can be a leader themselves, and then you start putting junior people under them, develop those people to come up underneath them. And on the process goes, with the goal being that you've developed a team and a staff that has high capabilities, high competencies, and can persistently execute day to day without really having to come and bother you about much at all of anything. And so your time's optimized for doing strategic outlook and strategic, projects and plans. So we're going to head back now to one of the first slides. And we're going to look at today's goals. This is the third slide. And we're going to look at eliminate daily chaos. So take a moment, if you haven't already, and go ahead and write down something from your day or your work process that's exceedingly chaotic, that you know could use a little bit of help, could use some work, where you have challenges at. I'll give you guys about 10 more seconds. Now that you have that accomplished, go ahead. We're going to look at tools here really quick. Which tool or tools are you good on, and what are you not good on? Just make a note. Hey, where can you tighten things up? Where can you tighten some things up with your staff? But say from my own personal experience, the two big ones I've usually noticed are the attitude side and the task list. Attitude wise, just as an FYI, like I was never known as like super Mr. Happy Go Lucky. That was not my thing. I was very much more known as the Eeyore. And I literally had a coworker who gave me this Eeyore stuffed head about 10 years ago because I was Eeyore. I wasn't pessimistic. I wasn't like, oh, the world's end. It's just, I was very what's the word? I can't even think of it now. Just very rubber meets the road kind of person. I've worked in operations for 20 years. So it's like things are, they aren't, and we're going. And so, you know, that's, you know, and they gave that to me, you know, it was a little bit of ribbing, but like but that's the whole thing. Like people knew I wasn't a jerk. I wasn't mean or angry with people. They brought me problems to help them solve because they knew I had a good attitude and I was there to work. And so, yeah, think of that for yourself as well. Like, how do you handle things? What are you doing or not doing? How can you improve? And if you have staff that are good people, they just have, you know, we'll call it ticks, like let them know, work with them on that. Like, hey man, you're super awesome at this, but you're having some challenges here and that really impacts everybody else. So when you get to this point and you feel yourself doing this, take 2 seconds, breathe, relax. We'll see what we can do. Okay. Then from here, obviously there's communications. We kind of beat that pretty well. But the big thing I would say is, you know, if you're having issues with communication in your teams, how well are you clarifying things? Have you given them a framework to communicate back to you? That's usually the biggest challenge, is it's providing that framework for people to communicate because they're confused. And sometimes, especially if they're younger staff, they might not know, like they can define the problem, but they might not know enough to know that they don't know enough information to give you an actual solution or outcome. So in which case that falls back, you know, from our previous, when we're talking about task debriefs, that falls back to you. Because if they don't know what to brief you as a solution and outcome, then clearly as you gave out the task, you didn't give proper resourcing, you didn't give proper guidance, those are the things that kind of fall back into your lap to go, well, wait a minute, like if my people can't do number 3 here, challenges and problems, they can't define, give me a solution, give me an outcome. Well, then like they should be able to, because I gave them a task, properly resourced them, and I defined for them what my expectations are. So why can't they give me something about this? If they can't, there's a problem. It's either 1, you didn't do what you're supposed to do, or 2, we have a, you know, it's a leadership challenge. We need to work with them on their note taking and some other things. But that's what we're here for. We're here to help build systems and build pieces to get people to be on point where they need to be at. Time, we won't go through that too much more, just that really if it's one of the most counterintuitive things in the world, because everybody says they don't have enough of it, but really time, if you can learn to manage that, then you're good. And that's what a lot of this is. It's really just re-looking at your time and understanding how and where your tasks work at, and how to really make it effective. Like I said, like I literally utilized the systems I had before to go through 400 plus emails a day, you know, plus work through all my task list, plus go do driving across not only, you know, the state of Florida, but also fly to other parts of the country and work remotely on a laptop. Like you can do it, but you got to set the systems in place to help yourself and then to help your team. Because that's the goal, right? The goal is to be, you know, football is an easy example. The goal is to be the quarterback. You're doing your thing. Your goal as a leader should be nothing but facilitation. You're giving people resources, information, and off they go. They're doing the blocking and tackling, and they're making things happen. Like, that's what your team should be doing all day long. Your only job is to be like, yes, no, good, yes, no. Like, that's it. There really shouldn't be a lot of you having to handhold by the time you've done develop the people that you have. Prioritization, we talked about that quite a bit. Prioritization filters. So think about that. Think about when we talked about when we wrote down the item of eliminate your daily chaos. And think about your filters and how whether it's a time filter or a facilitation, like how does how you manage your time or how you manage your tasks feed into that? Are there ways you can do that better? And sometimes it's literally just sitting down and taking an extra minute to think through things. And something to remember as well is like, well, so I know some people, obviously run back into time. It's like, well, man, my business day is this big and I keep hitting this bottleneck. Okay, well then like relook at how you structure your day sometimes, or what you spend your day on. And it's not to say that extracurricular activities aren't okay or that, having a good gym workout isn't important, but maybe you're at the point in your life where an hour and a half, 2 hours gym isn't it. You don't have that. You've got half an hour and you can work out at home before you leave for the office, or you can do it when you come home for 20 minutes. You come in the door, quick workout, shower up. Hey, it's wife and kid time, dinner, you're doing that. So it's really learning how to structure your day, kind of pick it apart and go, okay, where can I be the most effective, the most efficient, the most productive? And then setting attainable goals inside that space, because you can't do everything. And so there's different seasons in life as well. So it's just being mindful of that as you go through these things. A lot of it obviously is our goal is to teach and develop our staffs so they can pick up the ball, run with it. And so it's really leading by the example, and then by demonstrating through these things, because that's how you can teach back, like, hey, I'm doing this, and this allows me to do this. Here's my A through double Z that I can do because I'm doing these things, which means that the company can do this, which means you can do these things too. And so they can see the light, they can understand how important that is. Because then once you start doing this at work, they start doing this in their own personal lives as well. And happy workers, people with happy personal lives are happy workers, which means they're more productive. Sorry, excuse me. So just something to kind of bear in mind. And then delegation, we walked through that quite a bit already. And then the delegation framework, like we said before, preparing the tasks, the task itself, our post-task debriefs. And the 1 minute leadership development. This is a big one. It's kind of a foot stomp for me. This is kind of the best way to give feedback to people, especially junior members, to really get them to understand, to listen. People can do stop, start, continue, future expectation. Okay. And they might forget the future expectation, but they can remember stop, start, continue. And then from there, it's just a matter of you re-emphasizing that as you're going through your different tasks, as you're building them and growing them. So in summary, guys, we went through our tool, went through our eliminating daily chaos. So we have tools, communication, and prioritization. Do we have a way to increase our profits? We do that through making a more capable, competent staff who can persistently execute. And this allows us to enjoy life better. Really, because that's the goal. Our goal is to work hard, play hard, and enjoy the things that are important. So we want to reduce cost, increase quality, increase production, not increase payroll. It's really straightforward. And if you can have your people, and you and your people can do things more efficiently and better at a higher quality, the rest of it takes care of itself. So, and if you haven't already, if you have any questions, comments, we'll get that in one second. And again, I'm going to unmute everybody here in a second. The chat here. Okay, I've got a couple questions here on the chat. Sorry. Somebody had questions about virtual assistant. Virtual assistants are good, especially if you don't have any, like if you don't have any in-house staff and you're a single person. Virtual assistants are good. And then you can use the same framework with them. You're going to build a task list out. You're going to find out what tasks that you can, delegate off to them efficiently. And then you have your benchmarks, just like anything else. It's like, hey, here's an email. I want you to, I have this email set I need you to send out to people, or I need these follow-ups done. Here's a basic structure and framework for the communication pieces. Here's a little script. Here's this little, script for the email, script for the phone call, whatever you want them to do. And you just go over it with them. So you have your expectations set. My expectation is you're going to work through the task list, do these follow-ups, do these phone calls, do these emails. Here's my standard, because you can see it. We're going to work through it so you understand the expectation. Then here's the boundary. Hey, if you get lost or confused or something goes wrong, let me know. I'll listen on the first handful of these so that way you can get caught up and you're good to go. Or if it's specific follow-ups on certain, like supplies or resources, then that's something where they need to have a little bit more information. So just making sure they have all information on hand that they need. But then that's you building a proper task list and resource list that they can then reference. So when they're going through things, it's just right there. Boom, 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 boom. I got one on daily chaos equals cold calling. Well, yeah, well, that's just a turn and burn kind of thing. And that's just structuring as well. It's having their list, their phone numbers, and it's just people going through, and it's a lot of that would be probably properly updating notes, whatever systems you have. So it's really making sure that your controls are good. So it's whoever your staff is that's doing the calls. It's having a proper system, a CRM, or whatever it is that people can update efficiently. And then you're looking at reports that are coming out, and you can track who's doing what and if they're making the numbers they're supposed to make. Time blocking is effective. I saw somebody here had a question on time blocking. Time blocking works, but you have to remember, like, so for instance, specifically as a leader, you can time block your stuff as long as your time blocking doesn't affect the operations of your people. What I mean by that is you can't say I'm time blocking to go to the gym between 11:30 and 1:30 every day because my staff's supposed to be on lunch, but then everybody knows that the rush comes at lunch because other people are off work and they're coming to get your services or whatever it is. Like, you have to make sure you're available to people when they need help. And so if you're time blocking off for you to do things, you're not available, then that needs to be at a spot where that needs to be at a time frame where there's not a high demand for you, or people have been properly resourced to handle that. So for instance, like with time blocking, like with the email stuff, like that's really easy for like in the morning. In my case, I used to be in the field quite a bit. So before I'd go out in the field in the morning, I'd get up half an hour earlier. I'd quick go through all the emails. And then on top of that, my assistant, my admin, she had access to my email account. And we also had a group email for our team. And so I'd go through most stuff in the morning, make sure my emails were forwarding to her. So if anything major popped up, she'd see it. And then she could call me while I was on the road. But also too, I knew her mornings were pretty busy. So usually if I was out on the road, say by 6:30, 7 o'clock, I'd call her, she got in 8:30, I'd call her about 9:15. And I'd just follow up with her on the day. Hey, how are things going? There were 3 or 4 projects. Here's their addresses. What's going on with these? Have we heard from these people that we were waiting on responses for? And you start working through that. And so time blocking does work, but you need to make sure that it's in a way that it allows you to get production done, yes, but that you're not then interrupting other folks. Okay. Where it is. All right, so if you guys have any questions or comments at this point, if you guys want to unmute yourselves, you can ask questions. Be happy to chat for a bit. I'm going to go ahead and stop recording at this point and say thank you to you guys for being here. And you guys should get a copy of the recording. You also have the workbook. It's in the chat notes. And then, yeah, really grateful and appreciative of your guys' time being here. That's not what I wanted to do.